Alicia Ostreicher is a major American poet and critic. Twice nominated for a National Book Award, she is the author of 10 volumes of poetry, most recently, The Volcano Sequence. As a critic, Ostreicher is the author of 2 volumes on women's poetry, Writing Like a Woman and Stealing the Language, The Emergence of Women's Poetry in America. Her most recent prose book is Dancing at the Devil's Party, essays on poetry, politics, and the erotic. Ostreicher's poems have appeared in The New Yorker, The Paris Review, The Nation, Poetry, Kenyon Review, Atlantic, Ms., and many other journals, and have been widely anthologized. She has received many awards and fellowships.
Excuse me, I'm finishing my cookie. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, US1. Thank you, Library. Thank you, Arts Council. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's lovely to see you all. And it's always scary to read at home. I'm going to read some from The Little Space, which is a book of selected poems, and then I'll read from a book that's coming out in the spring. This one's a California poem. All us Princeton people also go someplace else some of the time. This one is called The Dogs at Live Oak Beach, Santa Cruz. As if there could be a world of absolute innocence in which we forget ourselves. The owners throw sticks and half-balled tennis balls toward the surf, and the happy dogs leap after them as if catapulted. Black dogs, tan dogs, tubes of glorious muscle. Pursuing pleasure more than obedience, they race, skid to a halt in the wet sand. Sometimes they'll plunge straight into the foaming breakers like diving birds, letting the green turbulence toss them until they snap and sink teeth into floating wood, then bound back to their owners, shining wet with passionate speed for nothing, for absolutely nothing but joy. That's from a time when we were living in Santa Cruz and had a house looking over a beach, and it was just gorgeous to watch all the time. Okay. This is a poem about Alice Neal. How many people here know Alice Neal's paintings? Oh, good. She lived for the most part of the previous century. I have to always keep remembering that we are in, what is it, never mind. The 21st century is where we are. And she lived for most of the 20th century in New York City, in various crummy apartments in the Village and in Harlem, painting mostly portraits, which are some of them of her neighbors, some of them of her family, some of them later on when she got to be known late in her life of people in the art world that are completely different from Rembrandt's, but as good. Full of her vitality and the vitality of her subjects. And she lived your typical artist's life with no money and lots of troubles. A live-in boyfriend who at one point was so jealous of her that he destroyed all her paintings, that kind of thing. nervous breakdowns and stays in institutions and survival. The studio, homage to Alice Neal. And the poem begins as a description of where she would have been painting in the 40s, and then segues into her voice. The studio. An oily rag at her feet in the warehouse of scents releases essence of pine. A steam pipe knocks. A radio urges the purchase of Philip Morris cigarettes, Ford motor cars, Saks quality slipcovers. Welcome to America, Grand Central Station, crossroads of a nation. There is no heaven and no hell. You got to understand, this existence is it. I blame nobody, I just paint. Paint is thicker than water, blood, or dollars. My friends and neighbors are made of paint, would you believe it? Paint slabs and brush strokes, right down to the kishkas, as my grandfather would say. Like bandaged Andy, not smart enough to duck. Palette knife jabs, carnation, ochre, viridian. Look at them. And look at me. I'm like Rembrandt, poor, omnivorous, and made of pity, made of love. Like Jose on the couch, with nostrils like Dante's Inferno. The thing about life in the bug house, says Alice Neal, is it's better than killing yourself. And you get some rest. Insane asylum, bug house, madhouse, loony bin, snake pit, it's like the Eskimo words for snow. I never appreciated the nuances, though. After a while, the life is only boring. The food condenses to pudding. The beds were cold oatmeal in the first place. The unconscious cruelties of the staff cease to amuse you. And when you find yourself secretly peeking through the window bars at menstrual red sunsets, you decide you cannot tolerate the other loonies another day, so you behave sanely and leave. Bye-bye. And you're back in the basement studio. Okay, Liz read that wonderful poem about teaching. And this one is also about teaching, about a creative writing class. Sometimes you hit it lucky and the whole class levitates and you don't have to do anything for a whole semester, but just take pleasure in it. So this poem is called The Nature of Beauty, with an epigraph by T.S. Eliot from Four Quartets that says, I can only say, there we have been, but I cannot say where. The nature of beauty. As sometimes whiteness forms in a clear sky to represent the breezy, temporary nature of beauty, early in semester they started it. Lisa read in her rich New Jersey accent, which mixes turnpike asphalt with fast food, a sexy poem that mentioned the place where lovers go to when their eyes are closed and their lips smiling. Other students grinned, thinking perhaps of the back seats of Hondas. Instead of explaining place as a figure of speech, the teacher wanted them to crystallize around it as around the seed of a cloud. You all understand that? You understand? The place we go to, where we've been? They got it. All semester they brought it back a piece at a time, like the limbs of Osiris. Mostly from sex. For they were all American 19 to 21-year-olds without a lot of complicated notions. But Doug got it from the Jersey shore, foam stroking his shins, his need leaping in fish form. Robin, one time from dancing with a woman she didn't have sex with, once from her grandmother doing the crossword puzzle in pen. Kindly David, from a monstrous orange bus whose driver amazed him by kindliness to passengers who were poor and demented. Dylan, from a Baptist church when song blent him into its congregation, sucked him into God for a sanctified quarter hour. There's no separation at that height. Before it dropped him, like Leda, back to earth and the perplexity of being white. The vapor of the word collects, becomes cloud, pours itself out, almost before you think the small rain down can rain. A brief raid on the inarticulate is what we get, and in retreat we cannot tell where we've really been, much less remain. And that's one side of teaching creative writing. That's the joy side. But when I teach creative writing, I always tell my classes the first day, write what you're afraid to write. And that they need to go into the dark places in their lives. That risk is the place where the energy comes from. And because of that, I get to hear many stories from students that I might not otherwise get to hear. Because we all sit there in a classroom as we sit here, as we sit and stand here, looking perfectly normal, looking as if we all, could be in a Budweiser ad. And then there are the secrets. So this is called the class. We say things in this class, like, why it hurts. But what they say outside of class is different, worse. The teacher hears tales from the combat zone where the children live, conscripted at birth in dynamited houses. Like all draftees, they have one job, survival, and permit themselves some jokes. Like my father hits the bottle and my mother. In my office, a sofa, books, prints, disorder on the desk. Everything paid for, chosen. They know that. I've put myself in a drug rehab program. Or, I know I'm anorexic. Or, the son of a bitch was raping me for years, and I'm so frightened for my little sister, but she refuses to talk to me. Their nervous eyes glide over printed poems I hand them, but nothing exactly sticks. The black student, pulled apart by his loyalties, whose bravado breaks like a shoelace at a cleaning man's curse. You fucking Oreo. The homosexual drummer tapping out a knee tune, wagging his groucho brows. Hey, you ought to meet my mom real soon, 'cause when I tell her, she's gonna die. Abuse, attempted suicide, incest, craziness. These are common stories. This is street-to-street fighting. Yet these children are privileged. They're eating. They have their own beds, and they go to college. The teacher's job is to give them permission to gather pain into language, to insist. The critics are wrong. The other professors are wrong who describe an art divisible from dirt, from rotten life. You have to, of course, you have to write it. What the hell do you think Emily did, Walt did, Hart did, Bill did, Sylvia did? Write for your own sake. Write for the sake of the silenced. Write what makes you afraid to write. The teacher hates the job. She'd like to make the classroom a stopping place in a pilgrimage. Poetry itself a safe house between slavery and freedom. Since freedom is impossible, is another word like foot and ankle to the amputee, the teacher helps them descend to hell, where she cannot reach them, where books are ashes, where language is hieroglyphs carved in walls running with slime which they'll have to reach for in the steamy mist while the whip opens their back. They'll write about that or nothing. Against evidence, the teacher believes poetry heals or redeems suffering if we can enter its house of judgment. Perhaps it is not the poet who is healed, but someone else years later. The teacher tells herself that truth is powerful. Great is truth and mighty above all things, though she would never say so in a class. Well, I'll do a funny one and then a not funny one. This is called Locker Room Conversation, and it's a true story, more or less. Locker room conversation. There are some men my husband never sees with their pants on. Though they work at the same university, guys from other departments. Men, it seems, don't bother wearing towels in the locker room. Though at his age there's often plenty to hide, he and his buddies have eyed each other for so many years, on and off the squash court. What would be the point? In the shower they chat about their games, about the last op-ed, or they gossip and tell jokes and do business. He likes to describe this camaraderie, and I like to imagine the naked men in their various stages of beauty and decay, splashing, surrounded by brightly falling water, the muscular definition of smooth youth, the humorous pouchiness of the middle-aged, the crisp ligaments of the old, that squashy layer of boy fat under the skin at last consumed. Their bodies like engravings you could title persistence or integrity, and sometimes even the very old, softened again like very old wool, all showering in a hum of conversation. He likes to mention some of the specimens I would enjoy. The big-necked boy athletes, the Indian MD in his 50s, graceful as Shiva. Today, he tells me, someone he's never seen walked into the shower. A kid, near 7 feet, black curly hair, bronze, except for a bikini mark, blue eyes, face of an angel, body of a Greek hero, thighs the circumference of my husband's waist, dung of a god, and conversation stopped. Every man just soaped and rinsed himself. Afterward, as they dressed, my husband asked a couple of friends, "What did you think of that guy?" "What guy?" they said. Pardon?
Couple more, yeah.
Okay. This is a poem I wrote 2 weeks after 9/11. Part of what struck me after 9/11 was that the reaction was, nothing like this has ever happened before in the world. The innocence of Americans. And the journalistic rhetoric and the political rhetoric got to me. This is called The Window at the Moment of Flame. And all this while, I have been playing with toys. A toy power station, a toy automobile, a house of blocks. And all this while, far off in other lands, thousands and thousands, millions and millions, you know, you see the pictures, women carrying their bony infants, men sobbing over graves, buildings sculpted by explosion, earth wasted, bare and rotten. And all this while, I have been shopping. I have been, let us say, free. And do they hate me for it? Do they hate me? The book I have coming out in the spring is called No Heaven. And some of it is about art, and some of it is about love, and some of it is about politics. This is called Daffodils, last poem, with an epigraph from Wordsworth. That's the famous daffodils, you know them. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. And another by Jack Spicer, West Coast poet. Going into hell so many times tears it, which explains poetry. I was in Cambridge, across the puddle, Cambridge, England, when the war in Iraq started. So I was thinking about daffodils. The day the war against Iraq begins, I'm photographing the yellow daffodils with their outstretched arms and ruffled cups, blowing in the wind of Jesus green, edging the lush, grassy, moving river, along with the swans and ducks under a soft March Cambridge sky, embellishing the earth like a hand starting to illustrate a children's book where people in light clothes come out to play, to frisk and run about with their lovers, friends, animals, and children, as down every stony back road of history they've always done in the peaceful springs, which in a sense is also hell because the daffodils do look as if they dance and make some of us in the park want to dance and breathe deeply. And I know that being able to eat and incorporate beauty like this, I am privileged, and by that token can taste pain, roll it on my tongue. It's good. The cruel wars are good. The stupidity is good. The primates hiding in their caves are very good. They do their best, which explains poetry. What explains poetry is that life is hard, but better than the alternatives, the no and the nothing. Look at this light and color. A splash of brilliant yellow punctuating an emerald text, white swans and mottled brown ducks floating quietly along, whole and alive, like an untorn language that lacks nothing, that excludes nothing, period. Don't you think it is our business to defend it, even the day our masters start a war, to defend the day we see the daffodils?
And they're days of celebration, days of Thanksgiving. And this poem is called Peace Day. In the theater of war, the strong fight the strong for possession of the weak, with victors deciding the last names of the peons or whose ideology will dominate the scene. The art director has created for either side the same look. Fields pockmarked by powerful projectiles, shattered steel, rolling bodies, fringes of flame, wisps of smoke, trees crunched like cornflakes. You will never meet the director of the scene. The captain is long since dead, his body parts scattered a few streets away. Severed limbs, slivers of bone, sightless eyes, and guts, all over the place. The producers of the war are nowhere to be seen in this theater. They and their children are in a secure mountain redoubt, one of the privileges of crony capitalism or dictators' favor. They still control the strength and wealth of the nation and decide who serves where. Cynically, they mount the slogans about war glorious war, all the while tending only their own gardens. You are unhinged by the odor, the excrement of frightened young men and women. Theirs, ours. Is there a difference? Then the maggots come. Maggots are equal opportunity eaters. The artificial names humans give nations or categories of race or religion have no meaning for them, nor do distinctly tailored uniforms with a buckle or a button shining through the caked mud, daubed darker with each gasp by blood oozing out. The coagulated life mass on which the maggots live, each shallow gasp bringing battered bodies closer to breathlessness. Maggots are God's creatures too. Do they thank him for each war's feast day?
Okay, this is Tonka. It's called Open Wide and Say, Ah. I am a cherry in your mouth, but your tongue does not taste my sweetness. It probes for the broken tooth, for the old pain it misses. Thank you.
Log Cabin Love Song. Every 4 weeks, I long for a cabin in Maine, a place in the woods where we paint and write poems on papyrus and peace. Into my log home, I admit no liars or cheaters or thieves, only persons who prefer to paint and write poems on papyrus and peace. As such, I have no comment, only you. In the absence of painting, you can read. In the absence of television, you can walk. You could use the exercise. You can contemplate pines. Our marriage will mushroom like lichen in April. I can see it now. I will not dust. You will not curse. Only the chimney will smoke.
Thank you. This first one is called My Grandfather's Pain. My grandfather's pain is measured on the dashboard of his Ford. It's only 3 miles, he tells me, from home to where my mother is buried. And this next one is called Baby. How does the borderless country of your heart fit in your tiny, tender body?
This one's called A Poor Man's Perception of Politics in the World. An addict, addicted to a reality that leaves me shaking my head, having to play so many games and sewing up holes of where everyone's bled. All that sappy lost innocence that I let ooze into love poems to hide those scars that tar the pureness of one's soul. I'm just trying to live a pure and romantic life, be a romantic, but truth be told, there's only one life that I know, and if this one's beautiful, I'm not sure that I want any more. For although I don't always live in that dream, believe in those stories I see on TV and the assuredness of people who talk about how life is perfect. Because if there's one thing I've learned in this life is that to most people on the other side of the tracks, hate to say it, but your life ain't worth shit. And that road we seem to be walking down now won't change any of it. Although maybe if people drew expression throughout times like they had swords, we could have put an end to the wars and started to talk about how we went down this bloody road. Because if you look at any successful social revolution that's taken place, it's been with nonviolence. That was the solution. But addiction is a part of human nature. Fiending for some truth that feels like it wasn't watched on TV, the hollowed words of politicians trying to make me believe that we're free to do whatever it is we want. The only freedom we kind of have is to talk, because as anyone in this room knows, to do what you really want in life is going to cost. And people seem not to mind spending a lifetime trying to acquire and hoard an abstract object that ain't going to do anything for you when you expire. If all you had was the plastic, you couldn't even start a fire. That now burns in a rocky desert where a soldier from Trenton wondered how he ended up in this. All he wanted was a free education, but the only thing he's been taught is that he needs to kill to live. And how about that mother, an Iraqi insurgent, neither of where knew where New York was, All they both really know now is that they're the ones dropping the bombs, and I guess I'm a traitor for saying that that might actually give him a cause, a reason to hate, a reason to be addicted to another man's words that give the blame, addicted, the same thing that rules our games, lifted the floodgates of shame that wash the valleys of all lost souls that stand there waiting for something or anything to come along and guide us to a view, to feel that there is something more out there that speaks to you. But I hate to break the news to you tonight, because all you got right now are regurgitated words of a mediocre poet that linger hollow and echo in this room. Because when I leave the stage tonight, I'm just like the rest of you, turning my cheek, holding my tongue when I should speak, laughing with injustice and wondering if I should cry, hugging a friend whose brother was a soldier just died, but instead I'm addicted, fiending for silence and serenity when I should be on the street corners preaching what I think. Instead, I leave it to sound bites of middle-aged Reaganites who wish they knew how to act. And Schwarzenegger, that's just going to show how contemporary politics is becoming very sad. Because all the money these cats raise for their campaigns could give a lot of shit back to the community or rebuild the building that's been bombed. Instead, they rent out decadent halls that gives the upper tier the opportunity to whisper their cause into our ears that the game is clear. Those with the most money are the ones who run politics. They pay for the candidates to be seen. And the green colors the words on the teleprompters where most our leaders speak. And keep in mind that no matter what season it is, the bush is always green. And Democrats, don't think you're any better. When's the last time anyone from my generation really had a leader? I mean, Clinton was cool, and even though it was GOP, Reagan had imagery, and Jesse gets mad props because his speeches sounded like poetry. But I'm still waiting to be inspired. A preacher on a pulpit telling me about a fire that has burned, it's called equality, and it's what humankind has yearned for throughout the history of time. And if you think we're even close to being there, you're living in a dream. I'm waiting for another king to rise and start educating the masses on why we can't wait. Because like a prophetic reverend once said on an ominous night in Memphis, I may not be there when we get to the mountaintop. And you know what I fear? Having to walk up the stairway to heaven and tell them I didn't get the chance to see it either. They still don't know what it's about. And there's Mahatma Gandhi standing behind him, and I have to tell them that Pakistan and India are still in Kashmir duking it out. And no words are being spoken by anyone, it seems, that can put the fires out. Because I guess we're addicted to telling ourselves that we're different. And only some deserve that dream, and those that can't afford it, well, I don't care how poor you are, anyone can save up for a TV. So when you go home tonight, maybe you hear those famous lines, home of the free, land of the brave. You know the way I look at it? Home of iniquity. I have to live this lie. Thank you.
What a wonderful night. We're so privileged to do this. I'd love to take 1 second to invite you all to Cool Women Light Warm Fires. We're going to Stonebridge for the first time at Montgomery next to the 1860 house on Friday the 5th of November. And this is a poem about November. My daughter Catherine was born the morning after JFK was killed. And that was a president I loved. The hospital was full that night of mothers come to term too soon, mourning the young president. A nurse brought masks for tears, scribbled nothing in her chart. 6 contractions, Catherine in my arms. Less time than it had taken him to die, and certainly less pain.
But is this going in the Trent Network TV?
Princeton.
Sorry for that. Anyway, if you like what I do, I have a couple CDs out for sale. One's called From Mouth to Mouth to Babes. The other is called Shadow Boxing Round 8. This one has 50, and for 2 it's $15. So if you like what I do, I have that for sale. Because this is what I do for a living. I take poetry very seriously, and it saved my life. And just want to say hi. I'm here for poetry. I will not tell you what my nationality is or religion. See why I alienate you, right? Because it shouldn't and doesn't matter. I'm also here and continue to hone my art to get away from the perils of most of mankind's blasphemous behaviors of the world. Because maybe I'm just delusional. But I'm here for the art of poetry. Your stance of how you vote is not for me to slap you in the face. I don't care. Man has always and will always, from the beginning of Cro-Magnon to Neanderthal, will always be a warlike creature. So vote for Carrot Top. That's my stance on that. That's why I'm a poet, not a comedian, because that was meant for comedic reasons. And I didn't. There's a chuckle. Okay. There's a chuckle. I'd like to perform to you just tonight one of my pieces, and then do what's called random explosions and do it within trypnosis. Hopefully it's not too long. Suspended the slicing cave, a shriek of pregnant automobiles yammer anesthetically with daring breed. Smell the freezing sun, gunmetal airs out against foul postures from the lizard's quench. Gathering snakefoot saint trails around its kingdom to quit this drawn moor. Stealing winds of purple skies, Omaha incapacitates a laughter to us all. Paralyzed by nonfiction, amazed at the blind hieroglyphics. In the dungeons of old St. Michael's bleached and strangled walls, as the water bites a noxious vertebrae, urge a tomb to settle amongst father's pecking scars, rage a heaping teaspoon, axe to grind on one more mistook hiccup, pounding the ground harder on a dream against these bruised lilies. Flare the white flecked eyes of that wasp. Ephedrine marathons now rise the black star that I'm hidden behind, for it's not the wounds we inflict upon ourselves that hurts the worst. It's the scars which paint us forever to never let us forget. Me, the masked machine of fire reflected in human overtones, felt like the meteor had fallen from the ceiling of Donegal. Omaha anticipates a falling to us all. These lion eyes celebrate piano lessons on searching for your key to open brilliant doors, drooling around dumb, dusty keyhole wonderlands to riot a crave as a kickstand soldier puts out our last strip of honey of merciful stung. I'm watching your fly twitch on atomic blues. I'm watching it. Lying in a deathbed of knowing too much, gazing up with madness of a punk cheek. From the great west I wane to bathe in its sieve. See, so das Blatt. Omaha decapitates a disaster to this all. Go to sleep. It's best we see our stars through coma radio. Do I have time to do one more? Okay, if you like what I just did, it's got the CD, and this goes on television. I don't mind everybody calling me out so you don't have to edit me. 609-393-3384.
To perform after such a performance. My first, I was short poem, so I may have to read more than one. I don't see any people in my age here. You're mostly younger crowd. So I'll just... Thank you. Good memories, I have many. A good memory I do not have. Good memories crowd my shrinking years. Let me thank you before my memory fades. This one was the first poem in English that I ever published a few years ago. The living past. Living things die, but the dead past lives on furnished in men's memory we call history. Belfast to Beijing, Kashmir to Kosovo, Hiroshima to Hebron, Sri Lanka to Sarajevo. Open sores of words long dead, and deeds we dread, feed poisons unseen, a virus in our being. The living past keeps killing the living. Like most people in the modern day, I grew up believing that as civilizations advanced, they went from the notion of many gods and goddesses to ultimately one god, or as I say about a Unitarian friend of mine, at most one god. And then in recent years, I've come to rethink my position. I hope the feminists in this crowd would appreciate that more. It's called Trimurti, three faces of God. Trimurti simply means three sculptures or three faces. From his holy high, the preacher spoke, all men are equal, here on earth as in heaven. Women, he said, are not men. It was then I went out looking for Trimurti, the God with three faces, male, female, genderless. I had first seen in childhood in Elephanta caves off the coast of Bombay. Portuguese soldiers a few hundred years before me used this god and other such sculptures for target practice.
One poem. It's called The Unicorn. Unicorn spelled with an A, not with an I. Unicorn. I saw a unicorn once at the big circus. The Cole brothers, I think it was. I was only something like 7, and it was really just something like a goat, a mutant, a sitcom version of Myth, real ugly. Hardly the silver horse I knew from books. Something, somewhere inside me, hesitated while the crowd applauded. In the 11th grade, I was the only one who wrote "No blood for oil" on my desk in calc class with peace signs in all the O's. One day I got shouted down, hollered at until I cried mercy in the lunchroom. But I had seen that unicorn for sure. It rode in a red and gold cart pulled by 4 great white elephants that left dung for a black man in green coveralls to shovel into brown barrels. In red and blue, the ringleader sparkled his white grin, and I wanted to blow up in disappointment. But that image of the unicorn sticks with me. On the news tonight, I saw it ring the ring with something almost like pride, looking something like an old textbook sketch of the Jersey Devil, that bastard come back to spread its embarrassment, being less a symbol of divine truth than a farm animal gone wrong, our albatross. Shaggy and deaf, it sat on its haunches, its single mutated, gnarled horn raised up before the crowd like a flag without wind, a gushing tower of crude oil, the vulgar smoke of smoldering cities. I saw the unicorn bare its teeth and shake its head like an impertinent child, one whose honesty cannot be denied. We're lost and slack-jawed, more shocked than awed. Unicorn, twisty manipulation, like you, I will not stop being ugly.
Yeah!
This is called Kid Dreams. Sometimes I think I'm supposed to just be alone, be a wanderer with no laptop, car, or cell phone, forgo those childhood dreams of my own homebred Italian soccer team, because maybe they'll never find me. So I'll follow my other kid dreams, and I can go to the safaris of Africa and teach English, though far it seems. And I'll learn Swahili and sing to them my dreams. In English, they'll sing go, 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 and chant till they tire, while I dance in circles and get lyrical in front of the fire. Mimi farahi sana. I'm very happy. Barefoot children mocking me with their rhymes, but perhaps that is my life, another day, another time, or maybe I'll go to Europe and discover my family tree, see where Mom and Dad came from, an Italian life that could be. He said, teach English to them, though hard it seems. And I'll learn Italian and paint them my dreams. In English they'll ooh and ah, and cheer as I rhyme, while I write on the walls of an old building and say in time, Oggi è il giorno che scrivo la mia anima. Today is the day I write my soul. Sandalfoot children and the day being me, perhaps that is my life, another time, another she. Yet sometimes I think I'm supposed to just be alone, be a wanderer with no laptop, car, or cell phone. But maybe I'll still be in the USA. Skip out on the East Coast and the good old NJ, maybe Colorado, climb Rocky Mountains so high, or really West Coasted in Cali with Fred, my Apple guy, and meet Steve Jobs or someone in between, and go to one infinite loop and be part of the scene where technology rocks, and thinking different isn't obscene. Or maybe I'll have that house, that different dream, maybe 6 boys and a pair of girl twins in between, my own homebred Italian soccer team, and a BMW with an iPod in the dash and a pull around back. Sometimes it just seems so simple to me and so matter of fact. Or maybe I'm all wrong. I'm just chasing kid dreams. Because on the way to one you can get lost and things become something other than what they seem. And that's when I think I'm supposed to just be alone. Be a wanderer with no laptop, car, or cell phone. Thank you.